This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Documentary filmmaker Andrew Grace on this edition of Conversations. Many people talk about the idea of going back to a simpler time, the good old days, if you will. But few have the stamina or willingness to actually do it. The documentary filmmaker Andrew Grace did just that. And fortunately, he took his camera along.
I must confess, I'm not much of a hunter. So why am I here in this freezing cold shack trying to kill a deer? Well, it's kind of a long story. A story about food. Not too long ago, my wife Rashmi and I moved back to our home state of Alabama. And even though both our families were steeped in agriculture, we didn't know a single farmer. So we decided to do something bold, to try and eat only locally grown food.
This is a battle of will.
Our friends joined us too, and we started by doing some research.
Is that the only vegetable they grow is beet?
Then we hit the road, visiting farms and meeting people all across the state.
Look at this, man. This is where all of our local food lives.
I told you they were dusty.
Back then, people understood, oh, a yard egg is a good egg, and it's different than a commercial egg. Now people don't know that stuff. It's like that information got lost.
Everything grew on the farm, so you just lived off what you had.
We have cold cheeseburgers and turnips.
Oh, y'all brought your own food. Too good for us.
We learned to can. We blew the chaff off fresh wheat.
We're blowing this chaff, baby.
And we spent hours putting up food for the winter.
This takes forever.
It's taking far more energy to actually do this than I'll get out of any nutritional value of this corn.
And each time we ate together, we felt like we were finding something that had been lost.
It's really impressive. It's beautiful.
But soon this became more than a story about eating local food. It became a story about change, about the environment and the economy, and about the lives of the people who grow our food.
We hear that global market all the time, and things just a lot more complicated than it used to be, seems like.
It just costs so much money. A young person could not afford a farm. You can't start from zero, as I did, and go up anymore.
But it's also a story about community, about family, and about getting to know the place you're from. It's a story about why food matters, and it's called Eating Alabama.
Now that really cut down on the transportation and delivery costs.
We welcome filmmaker Andrew Grace to Conversations. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why a film about farming and food?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the trailer sort of talks about it a little bit, but I moved back to Alabama after I grew up in Alabama, and my family's from there for a very long time, and I sort of had a love-hate relationship with Alabama when I was growing up. I mean, it was where my people were from, but at the same time I felt a little bit isolated from it. So I wanted to get away. We lived in the West. My wife and I lived in the West for a while, and I came back to take a job at the University of Alabama, actually. And coming back, I was thinking about a lot of different issues that I'd become interested in while living. Some had been long-standing interests of mine, but others had just kind of come about when I was living out of the state. Issues about sustainability and about good food, and sort of what has happened to small-scale sustainable communities. I think those were some of my interests. And my granddaddy, who was alive and living in Alabama at the time, he grew up on a farm, and I just was thinking a lot about the stories that he told me of that life growing up on the farm. So coming back to Alabama and being a filmmaker already and wanting to kind of make a piece about moving back south, I decided to make this movie that would sort of investigate a couple of different things that were rattling around in my head. One was, what happened to all these farmers? Where is this farming economy that I have heard so much about? And the other was, what has happened to the way our food system works that has created a system where I had recently learned when I started this project that most food travels about 1,500 miles from farm to table. And that's something that happens for all of us every time we eat, but it's not something we think a lot about. So that was kind of the impetus to try to go out and find farmers and eat locally.
So your concept was you were only going to eat things that were raised in Alabama.
Right.
Was that a challenge?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I sort of my conception of Alabama is this kind of rural place. I think a lot of people think of, people probably think of Kansas in the same way. You know, these sort of smaller rural states that have a strong farming economy and a long-standing history of farming. You think of it as being a sort of breadbasket state. So I thought I would go out into rural Alabama and find these farmers, and maybe what had happened is that the marketing opportunities didn't exist the way they once did, or farmers weren't online, or whatever. You know, I didn't know what it was, but I figured that they were out there, and I would find them. And then my film would be a process of showing others, oh, here's where the farmers are, and here's how it works. You know, but what I discovered pretty quickly in making the film is that there are so few farmers actually left in Alabama. And then the movie sort of changes. So the film is a kind of bifurcated movie, really. I mean, at the first part, you've got a sort of young, naive couple driving around the state, realizing that it's a little bit untenable, the idea that you'll go around and find all your food. Maybe Florida's a little different because you actually have a much larger farming economy here, but certainly in Alabama, you don't have enough farmers to feed all the folks who live there. We have to bring food in from elsewhere. It's just part of the way it is, part of the way the farming economy evolves. So I got interested in that.
Why do you think we have seen such a huge decline in and this has been going on for decades, in the small, quote unquote, family farm?
Well, there's a ton of reasons. A really great and complicated question. Like most good questions, it's a complicated one, right? But I think mainly you have this mechanization and corporatization that comes in the middle of the 20th century, after the Second World War, really. You have these big chemical corporations start developing more higher yields, more efficient crops, and the machines get bigger, the scale of farming gets bigger, and all that stuff is wonderful. It allows people like my granddaddy to get off the farm. But there comes a point, and this is what sort of the film explores, where that balance shifts a little too much. And we get to a place where we can't feed ourselves anymore, where we don't have food security, where the farmers who are left don't get paid a livable wage, where farmers have to farm 2,500 acres and take out crazy loans every year they want to farm, and they're still not even getting close to the middle class, you know. And yet we as consumers have cheaper food than we've ever had, which we all think is wonderful, and it is in a lot of ways, especially if you don't have a lot of money, but it's problematic that we've essentially created an economy that's done this. So I think that's the kind of really complicated part of that question.
As you explored the large farms, did you learn anything about what's going on as far as the genetically modified seeds and the use of chemicals and things of that nature? If so, what?
Yeah, so I mean, GMOs and genetically modified seeds have come in for 20 years now, really 15 years. And they initially had a huge higher yield, right? And it was a wonderful thing that farmers could buy these crops or buy these seed and farm in a different way. And part of the idea of especially products like Roundup Ready, which is a seed that you can apply in a field that hasn't been tilled and then spray with Roundup, and it will kill all of the weeds, but yet the crop still comes up in the middle. I mean, it's a kind of a strange idea from a culinary perspective that you would grow a food crop in the midst of this toxic herbicide. But if you can get over that, the idea was to also limit the problems of erosion. So there were good ideas that went behind it, but we sort of ceded all of our farming knowledge to this corporate structure, and we ceded all of our farming knowledge to these really intense chemicals. So we created a system that there doesn't seem to be a way backwards away from. So now you have things like, we have this real problem with super weeds that have come along that are Roundup resistant.
Super weeds.
Yeah,
wow.
It's sort of a strange concept, but these weeds grow and they don't, they're not killed by Roundup. So you have farmers who are growing crops and soybean crops that are Roundup ready, and you have weeds that come up right in the middle, and there's nothing they can do about that. So, you know, there are problems. Like any other process of efficiency, in the middle of it, someone falls to the wayside, essentially.
Did you get a sense that people want to go back to sort of having their backyard gardens or their little 2 or 3 acre farm? I mean, I talk to people. My wife, for example, likes to grow stuff in the backyard. I mean, do you get a sense that people want to kind of go back to doing that?
Yeah, I don't know if that impulse is big enough to feed us, but I definitely think it's there. And I think it's really, in a lot of ways, and this is sort of what the film explores, I think it's kind of a reaction to a lot of things that have happened with the way that our culture and our economy has changed over the last 60 or 70 years. And that's sort of a lack of agency that people feel, I think. So farming is a great example of that. You know, you have more and more corporate control, fewer and fewer farmers, more of a reliance on the corporations that control the seed and that control the chemicals and that control the equipment. And so people, they become less self-reliant and less reliant on their community and their neighbors, and more reliant on something that's really external to them. And I think if you see that as a metaphor, which as a documentary filmmaker, that's essentially all I do is see metaphors and things. I think it's a metaphor for the way that the rest of our culture feels too. And you look at things like the rise of crafting, you know, people are really interested in the handmade and knitting. I think all of this is part and parcel of the same thing. The idea of slow food, of locally based food, of getting to know your farmer, it's all about taking out these middlemen that have essentially hidden process from us and creating a deeper awareness of how things work and where they come from. And so I do think, I mean, all that to say, you're talking about people that work one job and have a decent income. I mean, a lot of people in this country don't have very much money. They don't have very much leisure time. They can't sit around and think about, I'm going to grow a nice little cute garden in the backyard, you know. Right. But I think for those of us that are fortunate to have a little bit of leisure time and to think about this stuff, I think we are starting to think more critically about it.
Speaking of that, when we look at the vast resources that we have, and we talk about how large the farms are, and you know how yields have gone up with wheat and corn and soybeans, et cetera, when you look into it, one has to imagine why we still have a problem with hunger in the United States and the world.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's absolutely true. Yeah, and that's something, you know, that's a great question that my film doesn't address. And I've been showing this film now for almost a year around the country, really. And it's so interesting to hear the reactions. And people react in really great ways to a lot of it. But without fail, almost, it seems like every Q&A, there's someone that says, what about this? Because you see that the issue of food and thinking about where our food comes from opens up, it's telescopes, you know, into every other aspect of culture, society, race, gender, everything comes into play. And hunger, I mean, social justice realities that our country faces. So yeah, it's not something I really deal with a lot, but it's absolutely true. How have we created such an efficient system? I think part of the answer is waste. We have an incredible amount of food waste. I mean, if you think about how much food we throw away on a regular basis, when you go to, you know, the restaurant that serves you this crazy plate, you either stuff yourself or you send half of it back, you know. And that's just one small example, but expiration dates on food in the grocery store that are not connected to, say, a food pantry that might be able to offer that food to someone who is struggling. So there are lots and lots of interrelated issues, I think.
As you went through the process of pretty much eating off Alabama, so to speak, from a health standpoint, did how you felt, did it change?
Yeah, absolutely. We felt a lot better in the process of eating locally and seasonally. And I think mainly it was because we cut out all these processed foods. So we weren't eating processed grains, for instance, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with processed grains, but we just cut all that stuff out, and we actually ended up processing most of the food that we eat ourselves. So we would take whole foods, you know, like a batch of collards, and we would cut the leaves and cook the collards, and then we'd save the stems for vegetable stock. And I mean, it was very much, you know, part of the initiative for this whole thing was trying to get back to the way that my grandparents ate when they were living on the farm, which was much more of a seasonal, what was in my food shed, you know, the things that they would have bought from a grocery store, or what we would think of as a grocery store, stuff they bought at the dry goods stores, that they might have gone maybe once a month to the dry goods store. So we tried to replicate that and use really everything that we had. So, you know, that includes like cooking pig liver and stuff like that, so, which is not very good. So yeah, I mean, it was a process for sure.
Now, are you still doing this?
Well, we have a little boy now, so I think part of the luxury of this film was being able to really devote our time to it every night. We do still eat primarily locally, and we're still a member of the CSA that I talk about in the film, which is a community-supported agriculture, which is essentially buying into a small farm and getting a weekly share of what that farm harvests. And we don't buy meat at the grocery store. We very seldom buy meat from a place that we don't source directly, partly because there's animal rights issues that go along with it, but to me it was the lifestyle that the farmers who raise meat, that they live because of this vast corporate control, especially poultry. I spent a lot of time with this farmer named Nathan Thompson, and Nathan grows about 1 million chickens a year by himself, basically. So that was a really sort of eye-opening experience for me, was spending time with him and hearing how he sort of talks about the changes that have happened in the course of his life, and how nostalgic in a way he was for what seemed like a simpler time when he didn't have to take out the sort of crazy loans that he has to take out now to buy a chicken house, and the concerns he has about what his kids are going to do. And so those are the reasons why I think we still really try to eat locally and seasonally and buy directly from farmers.
I know one of the characters in the film expressed concern that once his generation is finished with farming, it's going to be a real problem because no one is coming up to want to take on the role as a farmer.
Yeah, I think that's a concern that a lot of older farmers, well, not even older, farmers that are in their 50s and 60s, because some of those farmers that are in their 50s and 60s, like Nathan Thompson that I just mentioned, he really is the youngest farmer in his area, and he's only 50 years old or 55. So that's a kind of sobering reality for them. But that I don't. This is not an apocalyptic film. I don't really think. I think there are a lot of young farmers, and I think there are systems and structures that we can put in place to get more young people interested in farming, because I do think it's a very valuable lifestyle. And I don't just mean that it's good for us to have food. I mean, it's a great way to raise kids. It's a great way to be a part of a community. I think if we find more equitable ways to pay farmers through direct marketing, through buying directly from farmers, then we can create farming as an occupation that people might actually want to do. I mean, I remember being struck when I was making this movie about, and I guess maybe partly thinking about having a kid in the near future, and thinking about being young and thinking about what I wanted to do. It's kind of a prototypical sort of young person's thing. When you're in first or second grade, you're like, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a teacher, But very few people say, I want to be a farmer. It's kind of fallen out of the way that we think about an occupation, really. It's not, because we don't really know any farmers anymore. And if you live in the city, at least, very few people know farmers. And it's not something that you would project onto yourself as wanting to do. So I think part of the dream of this movie is getting to a place where farming is seen as a viable occupation again.
How do we get more people exposed to it?
Well, I think you have to eat well. I think it really truly begins with that. I think if you eat good food and you see what that tastes like, and you eat seasonally and you eat locally, and you meet these farmers who are growing this food, and you see the impact that your dollars have on their lives and on the tax base of your community. I mean, it's all interrelated. It becomes, you get this initiative to start to make this a lifestyle. So I think that's really what has to happen.
I want to talk about some of the characters in the film, and one gentleman I want to talk about he's a farmer, and he basically had told the story about how many of his friends are lawyers and professionals, and they question their self-worth. And he said, basically, I don't question my self-worth as a farmer. Tell us more.
Yeah, so that's a farmer named Edwin Marty, and Edwin is a farmer, and he lives in Montgomery now, but at the time he was in Birmingham. He runs an urban farm, or he ran an urban farm in Birmingham. And Edwin I think he's actually one of these new thinkers on food. He's not only a farmer, but he's really thinking critically about how do we change the food system. And that's, I think, one thing that is really great that's happening in this kind of food revolution is people are thinking about different ways of farming, and urban farming is one of those ways. So Edwin ran an urban farm in Birmingham. He does now in Montgomery. So it's essentially like a block of land in the middle of downtown Birmingham that's farmed like or farm out in the country would be. Wow. And that visibility that it gives to the city and to school kids, they do a lot of educational programs, is you can't calculate that. It's a really wonderful kind of psychic thing that happens in Birmingham when you drive through that area and you see a farm. It reminds you that food comes from a place. So I think he's doing what he loves to do, and that's kind of what he's referencing in the film, is that farming is not something that you sit around and say, like, what am I doing with my life? It seems pretty clear when you're growing food why you're doing it,
And you find out real quick, like, how good you are.
Right. Well, and again, like I was saying earlier, there's a stake in what you do.
Yeah.
There's a tangible, tactile sort of process that you go through. And I think a lot of people, I sit in a dark room a lot of the times as a filmmaker. move ones and zeros around on a computer, basically. And people who work in I mean, he jokes about lawyers, and my father's a lawyer, so I shouldn't joke about lawyers. But people who typically work in an office or who work in front of a computer all day, and so many of us are doing important work for the economy, et cetera. But sometimes you don't really see anything from that work in any kind of direct way. And I think there can be a sort of psychic dislocation that happens when that is your life. So that's kind of what he's referencing. Is I go out on the farm and I grow a turnip and someone eats it, and I understand directly what's happening here. Yeah.
One of the things that I connected with this film, and particularly with you talking about your grandfather and his growing up on a farm, because my grandparents had a farm, and I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in the summer with them. And I think back on that time, and that was some of the most valuable time and some of the most enjoyable time of my life. And there's a big part of me that wishes my daughter could experience that. And I think it builds a strong family bond. Did you find that as you talked to the farmers?
Yeah, absolutely, and a fear too about what's going to happen in the next generation, partly because of the decline of farming. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I had, and the film sort of addresses this, a sort of really naive nostalgia about the farm, and that's part of what the movie is really about. But I did notice that going out to these farms, you would see a tighter knit community and better, not really necessarily better, but different kinds of family relationships, which were really interesting to observe from a more suburban city kind of perspective. And so I do think that something is lost. I mean, something's lost when you leave your home, something's lost when you leave your community, and you don't think that that place has anything to give you. And I think that comes with age too. A lot of young people want to get away, as far away from the place they're from as quick as possible. But I think as you get older, you start to realize there's value there. So certainly this film is a real personal process for me too, in trying to discover that.
You said you had a love-hate relationship with the state of Alabama. Yeah. Now that you've come back home to Alabama, what's the relationship like?
Oh, it's still thoroughly love-hate. Yeah, no, there's an anecdote. One of my favorite writers, William Faulkner, who I would never even remotely compare myself to, but he, as you well know, is a really wonderful Southern author, and he was teaching in Montana, and a student asked him, she said, why, Mr. Faulkner, there are these great writers in the Deep West who love this place, and they know it, they're from here, and they write so passionately about it. So why is it that we don't have a similar literary tradition as the Deep South? And he said to her, Madam, I do not love the South, I hate it. And I think that, to me, I always related to that, this idea that to really explain something and really be able to talk about it, you have to also want to distance yourself from it to some extent. So it's a great place. It's where I'm from, but I think if you don't feel complicated about your hometown and where you're from, then you maybe there's something missing.
There's so many great stories in the South, aren't there?
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful place to make work. And I intentionally came back here to make films because I felt like, I'm sitting here sort of bashing Alabama, but I also have a real serious pride for the place too. And there are not enough filmmakers or storytellers really working in Alabama. Most people feel isolated by the place, and so they leave to go to New York or LA. I have all these Alabama sort of expatriates that live elsewhere, But it was important to me to come back and make films about Alabama.
What makes a good storyteller?
That's a good question, and I don't know that I have the answer. I think it's a real sincere passion for an empathy. I think it's really caring about the lives of other people. And I think when you do that, you start to see how talking to one another and trying to understand one another can actually create a story. So that's something I think a lot about because I teach filmmaking at the University of Alabama, so I have to teach people how to tell stories, which is sometimes difficult.
You have another film on Virginia Durr. Just in a minute or so, kind of explain what you did with that.
Yeah, so Virginia and her husband Clifford, they were these Alabamians who I'm sort of in love with and fascinated by. They were both born around the turn of the century and the 20th century, and they were brought up in these kind of segregationists. They were white folks, middle-class white folks, and very much a Jim Crow kind of family, but they had this sort of radical transformation into a progressive worldview. And that to me was really fascinating. They stood against the tide of their region to actually fight for racial justice and civil rights. And Clifford and Virginia are most well known because they bailed Rosa Parks out of jail the night she was arrested in Montgomery that started the bus boycotts. So that's it's just a great story. And Virginia was just a firecracker. I mean, she's just an amazing person. I just really, she died in '98. I never got to meet her, but I remember reading about her when I was a college student and thinking, you know, there actually is there's a model here to be thoroughly from Alabama, but not feel like you're of the place, but still want to fight for it to be a better place. So that was kind of why I was really intrigued by her.
When you decide you want to make a film, what do you look for? What is it that you're looking for?
I think, I mean, for me, it's about, like I said a little earlier, it's about passion. I mean, I have to really, you're going to be fighting with this sort of monster for who knows how long, year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, Eating Alabama took almost 4 years to make. So you have to really care about the reason why you went out to make the film in the first place. So if it's a person like Cliff in Virginia, you have to have a real sincere curiosity about what made them tick, you know. If it's a situation like Eating Alabama, which is how did we get here, you have to not really know the answer, and you have to be sincerely curious about how that happened. So I'm actually developing a couple of different films right now, and that's my criteria, is how do I find that film that's going to be able to drive these really dark nights of the soul that happen when you're working on a novel or when you're editing a film or whatever, you know.
When you go about making a film, and I'll answer this because we're getting close on time, so I have to give me a quick answer on it, but do you kind of have a preconceived idea of what you want to communicate?
Not so much, because of the documentaries that I make. I mean, The Dirt is a little different because it's a story that's over. Wow. Cliff and Virginia are both dead, and I know everything about their lives, and I want to figure out a compelling narrative arc to tell their story. But in something like Eating Alabama or the films that I'm thinking about now, I really think of them being more as like an essay. And so to me, the process of answering a question that I'm curious about becomes the process of making the film. So it's actually this kind of amazing adventure, really. You get to go out and try to discover, you know, what this issue is, what really is at heart and the root of this question that you have. So there's an essayist that I really like who recently said in an interview that he's not very interested. His name's John Jeremiah Sullivan. He's a great writer, and he said, I'm not very interested in an essayist who knows what he thinks when he starts the piece. And that's kind of the way I approach a film too.
Just let the story go where the story goes.
Right, and if you use the piece of work as the way and the vehicle to understand something better, then it becomes this really fascinating and dynamic piece to me.
It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Best of luck to you. The website for Eating Alabama is?
eatingalabama.com.
Okay, and people can find out when it will be broadcast.
Yeah, should be airing nationally on PBS in the near future. So.
Sounds good. Andrew Grace, best of luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
A couple of great films. Hope our audience gets an opportunity to take a look at them. He is a documentary filmmaker. Eating Alabama is probably the one that's most well known at this particular time, but probably a lot more coming down the pike, I'm sure. By the way, you can see more of our conversations online at WSRE.org/conversations. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Take great care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Support for this program is provided in part by these corporate sponsors. And by viewers like you.